Joining me now is Senator Bob Casey, Democrat from Pennsylvania. Senator, we got a lot to talk about. There's still time, I suppose, to change course here, given how close this bipartisan group says they are to completing their negotiations. Should the majority leader delay this vote?
Garrett, I don't think he should. I think Chuck Schumer's right. We have to move forward. And they've had now many months of negotiation and even the last couple of weeks working out an agreement with the president. It's time to move on this. That doesn't mean every piece has to be in place when we vote to proceed. But I'm afraid that a lot of Americans are seeing the same pattern. We wanted to vote just to proceed to a voting rights bill, and they wouldn't let us do that. Now it's something that they claim they want to move forward on. But once again, I think it's just Republican obstruction on something they claim they want to make progress on. We need to move in the direction of completing our work on this part, because we've got to get to the next part of this investment in the American people.
But for people watching this at home, I think the question is, what's the value of having a vote you know that's going to fail? How does that significantly advance the agenda here?
Well, I think we'll see what the vote is, but I think there's always some clarity that comes with a vote. That was true in voting rights when it was very clear that you had Democrats united on trying to protect voting rights and Republicans unilaterally, unanimously against that. This should not have been one of those moments. The Republicans should have worked with the leader to move this forward so you can at least get to the legislation, fill in the details, finish the negotiations, and then we can actually vote on the bill. But this is a preliminary step which is necessary to move it forward. I think a lot of Americans have waited for generations for this investment, and they don't want us to slow down and have the usual Washington process where just clearing your throat takes a couple of hours, it seems.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that style of speaking on the Hill. Senator, there's another deadline today that's getting less attention. That's on the reconciliation package, that $3.5 trillion bill that's not nearly as far along as the bipartisan one. The majority leader had wanted all Democrats ready to go forward on this, wanted agreement that the 50 of you all saw this as the path forward. Are you there yet? What's your understanding of the whip count on that decision, which is an even bigger investment?
Garrett, that's a good question, because what we're talking about in that bill is making investments in people, frankly, that have never been made before. Investments in child care, investments in early learning for every 3- and 4-year-old in the country, investing in more education beyond high school, in a particular bill I'm working on, Better Care, Better Jobs, which is investments in home and community-based services for seniors, people with disabilities, and lifting up the workforce, which is mostly women of color in America making $12 an hour. That's what we're talking about when it comes to those services. So we got to cover a lot of topics and make the investment. We still have work to do, I think, to come to a consensus, but we do have a consensus throughout our caucus on the total number, $3.5 trillion, but that's only a couple days old. We're now just beginning the work on the component parts.
Total 50-vote consensus, including the more moderate members like Joe Manchin, on that $3.5 trillion would be news. So let's put a pin in that. I want to ask you, add yet another topic to this. There's been some discussion already about the debt ceiling, which is set to expire. The current authorization, I think, is set to expire at the end of July. Do you see that being the next big partisan fight? Republicans don't look keen to help the Democrats who control both chambers raise the debt ceiling.
I hope not, because in my experience over more than a decade now in the Senate, it seems like every time we get to a debt ceiling cliff, so to speak, the ones who are willing to push the whole country into over that cliff into a very dark abyss seem to be Republican members of Congress. I hope that they will act like responsible adults, because in the past, a lot of Republican members of Congress on the question of paying our bills have acted like children. I hope they don't do that this time.
I know how much senators love being asked about the goings-on in the House, but I do want to ask you about the breaking news we had earlier today about what's going on with this select committee. That was meant to be failing, having the commission vote fail in the Senate. That select committee, I think, was meant to be kind of the last word on what happened on January 6th. Are you concerned at all that with the Speaker's decision, with Republicans now apparently pulling out entirely, that anything that might come out of that committee will just be viewed as partisan? Are they still going to be able to do the job set out for them, given what's transpired in the last hour?
Well, Garrett, I think most Americans understand that when it comes to a thorough investigation of January 6th, not just to learn what happened and why and who did what and who didn't take action in the executive branch, for example, and holding people accountable for January the 6th, you can count the number of Republican members of Congress who really want to get to the answers to those questions. You can count them on one hand, unfortunately. And anyone who voted for the objections to my home state of Pennsylvania or Arizona should have no role in this. They are, by definition, disqualified. They voted against the Constitution. They committed what I think is a constitutional crime. They should be nowhere near the membership and participation in any investigative effort, because they are, by definition, totally biased in favor of a set of actions that are contrary to our Constitution. So I think the Speaker did the right thing.
Senator Casey, if that viewpoint has been echoed by other House Democrats, I think we're learning a little bit more of what might have gone into the Speaker's decision. Thank you, and we'll see what happens with that vote later this afternoon. Thank you, Senator.